Kia ora, everyone. I'm joined by Benjamin. Is it Pigott?
No, it's just Pigott, mate. Nice
Pigott.
and simple, as it looks. Yeah, as it looks, mate. As it looks.
AKA Weka's Adventures, mate. Where's the nickname Weka come from?
Oh, well, I think we'll keep the PG version going, but Wekas are quite cheeky, and quite cunning. So, there's a couple of good adventures in the backcountry that probably gave me that name, but it's kind of like exclusively from my mates,
Yeah.
But no, the old hook, I'll just chuck Weka in there as I think people start to realise now who it is. But no, pretty mischievous day on the old adventures. There's always something happens. So crafty and cunning.
For me, that springs to mind, mate. It's nicking the odd thing. I hope that's not where it comes from.
No, definitely not. No, they're just cool animals. I just love them. They're one of my favourite New Zealand bird. They're just crafty and they get into everything and cause mischief, and they're just real curious. So
Yeah, mate.
It's a pretty cool bird to go nickname by.
Yeah, the my best experience with Wekas is on in Patterson Inlet in North Island. We went there for a school camp, and I was hugely thankful because I was sick before we even went on the fishing boat that day. And so that I was making all the burley for everyone on the boat, and then we managed to get to Old Island. I felt a whole lot better, and you got to interact with those cheeky buggers, so it was bloody good.
Oh,
you got me there.
Yeah, I'm here. Yep. I'm listening. Hopefully
nice,
the internet holds in there.
Yeah, that's all right. We often get a bit shaky in the first 10 minutes of Zoom. I don't know what it is, but for some reason the first 10 minutes is a bit shaky, and then it hits its straps. Mate, you're drinking a cup of tea. What happened to the raro?
Oh, hey, the hot raro. I tell you what, the debate over this has been phenomenal. I didn't expect such a backlash. So, to me, hot raro is just what you have in the bush. It's just the goer, It's just nice and aesthetically pleasing. It's just awesome. And I put it up on the old Instagram, and everyone's, what's this hot raro carry on? And I was like, it's just what you do. Like as a kid, that's kind of first starting out tramping. That's what you have. It rejuvenates you, gives you the energy. It's great, And I'm surprised most people don't know anything about it. So yeah, good cup of hot raro, just not boiling is the key. Just nice and warm, and you're away. Yeah.
Nice. And so is that a morning drink, an evening drink, any time of the day drink?
I think it depends on the level of how buggered you are, really. So any time, probably exclusively for the evenings. And after a real long day on the hill, get back and hot raro. The next step in the evolution of that is hot barocca, which I'm sort of disinclined to introduce to people yet because they haven't got the hot raro. So hot barocca might be a step too far, but that's also really good too. So
yeah, my cousin gave me one of the backcountry, I guess it was called like a overnight pack or weekend pack, and there's a sachet in there of crystallized cordial, and so but I didn't know what time of day to use it. So now that I've got the tip. And then of course there's the Hunt Smart. I wonder how that goes. That's probably along the same lines of the barocca, mate. It might just all those B vitamins and BCAAs just might take things over the edge.
Yeah, true. I can't comment. I don't want to get into a bit of a brand war here, but I imagine the hot Hunt Smart would be pretty good too. Yeah.
Brand wars. Yeah, no, it's always it's just like I mentioned, the backcountry, and they've upped the game. There was a few gluten-free ones in there, which I was like, oh, this is good. Yeah, but you see, I saw you were dabbling in a bit of radix as well. How have you found that in the backcountry? Do you think you could go 54 days straight on it? That's what the guys reckon. That guy ran across the Pacific did. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually, I think it was over 100, wasn't it? Yeah. It's funny. I actually listened to your podcast with old Radix the other day in a hut in Te Aroha, and I was sitting there eating one. And I thought, oh, that podcast looks real good. So listen to it, and yeah, that story was incredible, man. I just really gave me the appreciation of what meal I was eating, and I started looking at the packaging, and thought, crikey, yeah. But I definitely like the radix. I was a bit of a fan of backcountry for quite a while, backcountry cuisine, and still a good meal, but radix is new for me, and yeah, really love them. Just the nutrition, I think, real important in my line of work to get a good meal at the end of the day. Something I could resonate with his message was just getting the max out of that meal. So while it tastes good, yeah, full energy. So definitely rate it.
Absolutely, man. And you've as you said, you set the ambience, the atmosphere there. You've got the map on the wall with all the pins. I take it those are the huts.
Oh, can't give too many secrets away, but yep, those are my that's all the huts in Te Rewera, Whirinaki, Te Puatane, and a few other ranges as well. So that's kind of my my little patch run around. So yeah, I sit there and scheme as to where to next, I guess.
Nice. And so what's the crossover between going to these huts and you work with Doc?
Yeah, cool. So I guess I'm pretty new to my current role, and I'm really enjoying it. But fortunate enough, I'm what's called an inspector. So Doc has a whole lot of asset inspectors, basically, who every asset's on a life cycle, right? On a cycle that needs to be checked. So in my position, we get to rock around the back country or any front country as well. And every time an asset comes up for inspection, we go and check it out. So fortunately for me, that fits really well with my passion for huts and hut bagging. So I get to go into these, really cool backcountry places and check on these assets from a safety point of view and a condition of life assessment. So two components to it. Want to make sure an asset's safe and that it's hanging in there really. So teasing really well to get in the backcountry. Yeah.
Well, mate, I don't know if you're the right person to, but I was at I don't know if it's classed as an asset anymore, but the Makino Biv's in a little bit of need of an upgrade. I was wondering if we could do something like the Backridge Biv, bring one of those into the into that little beautiful wee basin that it sits in. We were walking back from the Makino hut and just probably 100 meters towards the hut, we just had a deer stroll across the track. So it's a bloody little good spot in there. And as I'm learning more and more, the more time I go in there, the lay of the land, I can see why that Biv is set up in there. But unfortunately, the old the iron is getting a bit holy. And when the rain was coming down, we poked the torch inside and saw a few puddles. I thought, oh well, we won't be staying here tonight.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, that's the question. Do you do something like that up, and you might get a whole lot more people go there? That's a plus or a minus. I don't know. It's just those hard questions. But the BCT is definitely doing some awesome work now, and a lot of these kind of smaller sites are getting a lot more emphasis on. So you never know. Could be a future project.
Yeah, I'll Matt Short, who does a little bit of work with the Rohani's. He was flicking me through the list, and he's got a good connection with the Makino Biv as well. So I think he went and tried to do a little bit of work on it at the end of last year. But yeah, it needs some new iron or just maybe a complete do over with the new Biv style. It wouldn't be far to walk from the clearing or from the Kanuka, but we'll see. We might have to have a chat to the dock office, and I might bring it up at the next Hastings NZDA. It could be something that we put forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's the thing, it's really cool. I think Doc, there's probably historically been a bit of negative perception around Doc and wanting to get things done, but now certainly the BCT along and a lot of mindset changes, there's these awesome opportunities opening up with community groups managing huts and putting in the effort. Because I mean, a lot of the time, we want these huts to stay there. It's just how do we do that? So it's really neat that we've got groups and dedicated people, like you mentioned Matt's name before, real keen, and that's awesome. Need more people like that.
Yeah. So how much does the backcountry trust come and interact with you?
Oh, I mean, hey, end of the day, we're just the guys on the ground running around finding the problems. So really, probably not a lot. There are quite a few inspectors who have a really good building background or engineering background. They probably get utilised quite a bit in certain areas. Just depends. I mean, for them, they kind of need eyes and ears. And inspectors, in our role, we are the eyes and ears for Doc, basically. So we kind of, again, find the problems, pass them on. So sometimes could be applicable for us to jump on a flight with them, I guess, and check something out. We've got some information. So it just depends, eh?
Yeah. So Rohini's just had the A-frame hut redone, and I saw plenty of people saying they need to put some boulders or bollards in front of the track to stop people wrecking it. That someone wrote that someone drove up the thing. I mean, what that just must break your heart.
Oh mate, I've seen a video of someone doing that. It's just really sad, to think that, I mean, hey, a perfect little lean-to A-frame, of course people are going to drive up it, It's just really sad that that happens, because people do have no consideration for the amount of time and effort it takes to build something like that and to maintain it. So it really is heart-wrenching, But the fact that there's groups in there now fixing it up is, I guess, a really good outcome of that. So they've got some bollards protection in place that I think will hopefully prevent people driving up it again. But yeah, that hut needed some serious love. And again, there's a lot of huts like that around, especially road end huts. Anything with 4 drives tend to seem to get hammered. So it's just about looking after them, not smashing them,
Yeah. And I suppose it's like that little bit of balance. I went into Awatere the other day, that is only it says 2-hour walk, but probably you could do it in 45 minutes to an hour if you hoon it. But that's not far to go, and it's in great nick, and it looks like it's had a little bit of work done on it. I think the information says it's 4-bedder, and you can fit about 8 or 9 people in there. So what sort of drives the decision to increase the bed numbers, or change it around, or increase the size, or upgrade it to a higher level hut? Do you know much into that?
Yeah, so I guess there's quite a bit, and actually that's where part of my role does come into it. So with assets, obviously they have a life cycle depending on the level of deterioration. So you're looking at it, an inspector might go and say a hut has 20% estimated remaining life. So that's 20% of a certain time period. So say a hut's 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it is, and then they'll look at replacing that asset. So for us, we can have a gauge as to how many years we think that hut has left. So that kind of feeds into an overall review for replacement. But as far as like extending bunks and things and adding upgrades to a hut, it really depends on, I guess, the district and what they want to do. In the backcountry, of course, you've got lots of huts. Like the Tararuas, for example, there's over 40 huts in there, or Ruahini's 59 odd, and that's a lot of huts to maintain. So to fly around and try and build big extensions onto them isn't really practical. So often, most of the time, you're not really looking at upgrading those kind of huts, certainly backcountry ones. Obviously, new rebuilds are important at really heavily hit sites. So, for example, Sunrise Hut, you've got lots of people going up there. So that kind of site would probably be, I guess, designated, more so for an upgrade or an extension rather than something like Marapia Forks. But it's really dependent on, as well, visitor numbers. So this is kind of where there's an argument for hut books and people signing hut books. A lot of some cases to build new huts or fix huts come from how many people visit those huts, of course. So signing the visitor book is really the best thing we can do as outdoors people, to let Doc know how many people are going there. I know lots of people, myself included in the past, didn't used to sign hut books, and then had it pointed out to me that, hey, if you don't do that, how do we know how many people are going there? So that's another really vital bit of information that people like Doc use, just to, how many people go to these huts? Is it worth putting under 2 bunks and 20 bunks and or whatever the case is? So.
Yeah, and does it sort of matter? Like, say the free huts might be a place where people are less inclined to sign in because they're not recording their ticket number, or another case maybe that those huts are a little less up to scratch. So again, there's not that sort of buy-in. But if there's sort of a large number of people going and recording at a lesser hut, would that sort of prompt, like you said, more sort of investment and more resources into that type of place?
I mean, potentially, I think it's quite dependent on location too. I mean, say if you've got a 2-bunk hut that's just getting hammered, like a little dog box bib, then sure, I mean, that would really question, put some serious questions forward as, hey, is this enough? Do we need something bigger? I mean, look at Iron Gate Hut in the Ruahini's, that's the new one in there. So there's all of these kind of things that definitely feed into it. So even if it's a free hut, like a basic backcountry hut, still worthwhile, because you just don't know what's going to happen with it. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is the hut gets pulled out and that will only generally happen unless it's hit by a rock slide or avalanche or whatever. And that happens, it's going to be because people aren't using it. So if people can record, if they go there, that's the best thing that we can be doing.
You said about rock slides. There's a picture of your on your Instagram of a hut that's been washed down a stream. It looked reasonably intact. What was the story there, man?
Oh yeah, man, that's a funny story. That was actually how I started in doc, was because of that hut. It's kind of weird. It's funny how life channels you, but that's Digger's Hut in the Ruahines, or it was formerly Digger's Hut, and sits just off Takapati Road. You can drop down into it or come up the creek. And mate and I went in there hunting, and it was snowing and pretty bad weather, and I don't know why we were going, but we did, and dropped down. It was pouring with rain. We got down to the creek, some Makawakawa Creek, and couldn't cross it. Way too raging torrent. So we camped up, spent the night there, and the next morning the river was still pretty marginal. Hadn't seen any deer. It was just way too wet. So anyway, my mate wanted to head out, and I said, "No, we'll go down to the hut." For me, a trip kind of has to have a hut. That even if it's hunting, you got to get to a hut at some point in the trip. So we'd actually been there before, so we knew where it was. So we had to smash down the true left side because we couldn't walk down the river. We got down to the flats where the hut should have been, and it was real weird. It was all like in a jungle, like monsoon kind of territory. It was just all the bush was sort of covered in water and up to our knees, wading through mahawi trees with water. It was really weird, and there was a big backlog, and we thought this isn't too good. And got down to the terrace, and there was just this big cutout, and we saw the toilet sitting there, and the toilet was fine. And my mate Danny first said to me was, "No, mate, hut's gone." I looked and I said, that doesn't happen. You don't. How many times do you hear of people finding huts washed? It doesn't happen. I didn't believe him. So he did a bit of walking around, and he'd come back with a post with a whole lot of concrete, a big pile with a bit of concrete on it, put it in front of me, and he said, "There you go, mate, it's gone." And with that, I had to believe him. So I looked out on the river, and I saw the porch, or a bit of the veranda sitting on the river. So that's when we knew it was gone. So we did a bit of thinking, and we thought, well, we better go and find it. So we kind of crossed over the river, and we probably, looking back, it was pretty dodgy. I had to climb over this tree, and the river was pretty high. And I got down, and the hut was about 300 meters downstream.
Wow!
So it had gone quite a way, and it was just sitting there, perfect as you say, in the middle. And I actually climbed in, had a little poke around in there, and the floor had lifted off, had kind of ripped off, and some silt had got in. But other than that, she looked really good. But unfortunately, it couldn't be saved just because of its condition where it was, of course. So they had to chop it up and fly it out piece for piece. But the fireplace survived, so that's sitting somewhere for another hut,
Yeah. So do you know if there's any plan to replace it?
Oh, it's been a bit of a debate because it's quite a cool spot, especially for hunting in there. Probably shouldn't say it on your podcast, they give it away, but it's it's a real cool spot in that creek. And while there is, again, some people would like a hut to be there, where it was, the terrace was destroyed, and that was kind of a really good site. So whether they want to put a new hut in there on another terrace, I don't know. But again, putting a hut in is pretty costly. So going back to what I said earlier about visitor numbers and user groups, you got to look how many people actually use that site. And if it's a whole lot of hunters who don't sign the book, it's quite hard for a planning team to justify building or putting a proposal forward to build a new 6-bunk hut. So that's where something like the BCT might come in. Don't know, but pretty hard spot to get a hut in.
Yeah, you're sort of saying about hunters not really signing in. That was one thing at the Makino hut. There was a long time between hunters in there, and maybe it is just that they haven't been signing the book. So yeah,
hard to tell. I mean, in some cases, up to sort of 60% of people, 50 to 60% we reckon don't sign hut books. So it depends on the area, but it's not just hunters. Definitely not slagging a specific user group off. Lots of people might be running through day trips. A lot of day trippers don't sign books. So it's just trying to change that mindset. I mean, it takes you a couple of minutes, but one, it's good for your safety, and two, it really hits home when those hut books are collected by a ranger or an inspector. We'll take them into the office, and one of the planning team guys will have it sitting there, and it might be used for that data might be used. It takes a lot of effort to go through a hut book. I have had to do that in one of my previous doc roles, read every single line and enter it in. It's a lot of data, A lot of data. Good yarns though.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you also collect the tickets while you're in there?
Depends. Again, if the hut ticket box is full and we have a key, sometimes that's usually locked, we might do that. But normally that's kind of the ranger's job. We'll go and do that. Again, we're the eyes and ears. We're finding the issues. Sometimes I might carry a hut book with me to top it up, but normally we'll put a notification in for that. Got to give someone else a fun job too. Eh? We can't have all the fun.
It's a special job, eh? You're collecting up
taking the tickets.
So is there some sort of hard and fast rule that goes with how much a night stay in a backcountry hut costs?
Yeah, so it depends on the category of hut. So you've got basic, which are generally free. Your standard huts, which I think are about $5 a night.
$5.
Don't quote me on that. Yeah, something with a ticket. Again, so you can also get the backcountry hut passes, which I used to use before my doc time. So they're really good. But yeah, and then a service hut can sort of be around $15. I think it's $5 tickets. So it just depends on that category. And then great walk huts, of course, vary in prices, but they can be at that top end. But definitely a backcountry hut pass for anyone who's sort of visiting, I think more than probably 10 or 12 huts, kind of serviced huts in a year, staying the night, a backcountry hut pass, which gives you the full year, really worthwhile. I think they're kind of over $100 to sit around that, sort of somewhere between 120, 130.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Really
I did have a look, shortly after, that was in December, and I think you're right, about $130. And so we're doing the math on the sort of $5 hut. I was lucky on Saturday night. I had a ticket in my bag, but I sort of said to the other bloke, next time you buy a hut pass, just grab two, and that's your IO. Chuck in the hut book where it's for, and you'll be good. Like last time I was in Makino, before that I had to put in one for Macintosh that I forgot my hut pass for.
Exactly. I mean, hey, and that happens, and that's fine. I think people do get quite embarrassed about it, but it happens. You forget. And I mean, again, jumping on that topic, there are quite a few people who don't pay for huts, and sometimes they think that because pay taxes and so on, that's okay. And I mean, hey, if that's their belief, I mean, that's not how it works, because we're still going to maintain these assets, but that's how they roll with it. But I think if you forget, you can pop one in the next hut. That's good as gold. Happens all the time.
Yeah, I had to laugh. I sort of didn't really understand the idea of hut passes, because there's a dock book in the Mangaturutu hut in the Kaimais, but it's a free hut. Everyone had entered into the hut pass like their rifle caliber, and so I just thought that was people being cheeky that they had to bring a hut pass, and I was sort of sitting in the hut by myself going, "Oh shit, was I supposed to bring a hut pass in there?" And I found it out, but then of course the Kawika ones are mostly a bit higher level, and so you need to bring a ticket along, and so I have forgotten that one time, but that's something that I keep conscious of, because exactly that it's such an amazing asset, and for $5, like, it's pretty incredible, especially when you look at places overseas and lodges and all the rest. It's pretty amazing to have that thing that you can just roll out a sleeping bag, and sleep pretty comfortable, have a fire on. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, to be fair, and we're so lucky in New Zealand, I think, and a lot of us take that for granted. Like, I certainly did. Probably still do to an extent. Like, we just have it really, really well off. In fact, we can just on a weekend pack up, go into a hut, stay there cheap or for free, or tent for free, and just go hunting. Like, we've really got it, pretty well sussed here, and we really owe that to back to the deer culling days when the Forest Service built all the huts. That's what started it off for deer control. So thanks for introducing deer, I guess, our ancestors. That's why they got all these huts.
Yeah, and thankfully there was a few smart people that saw an industry for meat, and then of course wild capture as well. The same sort of thing. Forest Service made some money, and some people made some money.
Yeah, exactly.
So, mate, you said about going hunting. Your email had the number 270 in there. Is that a reference to your caliber of choice?
No, definitely not. I couldn't dare touch 270. No, definitely not. I shouldn't say that, because the rifle caliber I use is a bit smaller than that. So, but no, that's I actually just run a 7mm08 or 7mm latte, as most people would say. So Auckland caliber, I think everyone gives me stick for, but hey, it's shot bull tar. It's all I need for now.
Yeah. So, And where did the collecting huts or hut bagging, as you termed it, where did that come in? Was that part of what got you into the bush, or while you were in the bush, you sort of started to go to one, too?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't start out a tramper, or I guess if you like, or hut bagging. I started out hunting as a young fella. I come up from a family who was pretty into hunting. My grandfather was really big in it, and in the early days, and that was all I wanted to do. And it kind of started out in the Tararuas, got out a few hunts with my uncle and cousins, and started going to the odd hut. And Herapai Hut was my first hut, and Roaring Stag in the Tararuas. And I didn't really show interest, I just wanted to go hunting. And I remember coming down from Herapai, my uncle told me a story that he knew someone that had been to all the huts in the Tararuas. And I just heard that and I thought, wow, that's epic. Like, could never do that, That's 40. It was 45, I think, at the time. I thought that's insane. So I got a map and put it on the wall, probably like the one behind me. And the Tararuas, I must have been about 13, and looked at it all, and I just said, right, I'm going to go to every single one. I just gave myself a few years, and I mean, it took me a while, but I got there. So it was just, progression through hunting and eventually to tramping, and it just alternates. So I just started out with a small dream, And then once I did the Tararuas, I thought, well, may as well start on the Huruhenis and progress north,
Yeah. So what age was that?
Oh, I think I've probably been 12. So not as young as lots of kids get into hunting nowadays, which is cool. But yeah, 12 was when I went to the first hut. So since then, I'm only 24, and I've been to 262 now, I think. So I'm chomping through them. Yeah, I've been to, in the last year, I think I've been to like 100 alone. So I really racked it up in the last year or so. So nice. Yeah, it's good. But to me, it's not just about bagging a hut. It's about the whole adventure. So you can fly on, you can pack raft, you can fish. There's just so many different cool things you can do at a hut. There's nothing better than getting to an old Forest Service hut with an open fire. Cranking up the smoky fire and cooking a bit of veni on it. It's just primo.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mate, before we get into pack rafting, you mentioned your grandfather. What was his sort of stories and tales and mentorship?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I unfortunately wasn't at the age where I got to know him well enough from his hunting stories, but I've had his kind of legacy to live up to afterwards. And he did quite a bit of stuff down south with certainly Stewart Island. He really loved that. He did 21 trips there in his time, and he really loved Stewart Island, and certainly hunting wapiti in the early days. So the late sort of 1950s and 60s, he did quite a bit down there. And they sort of started pioneering the old food drops out of airplanes. Mm-hmm. They did have a very good success rate. They used to drop their food and they'd smash most of it. So they had to go weeks without food. So certainly with fresh food anyway. So they did some pretty cool trips, and just hearing those sort of stories as a young fella really inspired me to go hunting. Seeing photos of Tar and Chamois, he had some awesome photos, which back in those days, he used to carry about 7 or 8 pounds of camera equipment with him, so they were hardcore guys back then, and it was just hearing those stories really got me into it. So while I didn't have enough time to go hunting with him, I was too young, certainly being around and looking at his photos really got me captivated,
So was he taking those on slides or on film?
Yeah, slides. Yep, slides at the start and then progress to film. So yeah, so we managed to get all of them, and my old man did a really good job of sort of scanning all the old photos. So we've got sort of all those old memories, which we've kind of started putting into a book. So hopefully we can get that just for our family's sake. Hey, just keep it all there and keep it together. Might be able to add to it one day. Who knows?
Absolutely. Someone I used to work with in Te Aomuru, their grandfather was one of the first deer farming licenses. They were at Highland Station, which is near the Blue Lake in Rotorua. And they had this family book of his sort of journeys through farming and that whole sort of expedition. And like, there was just something that their family had made, and she gave it to me, and like such a cool read. So yeah, having something like that as a family would just be pretty awesome. You said around the food drops, that's in Call of the Wapiti. How sort of long was he in there for?
Well, again, I again, top of my head, I can't remember. But I looking at the book at the notes, so kind of talking, almost a month at a time, and maybe longer. Like some of the walks they did were just insane, and the gear they had at the time. I remember one of the stories, they had the tent, the tarp over them in the pouring rain. I think it was for 6 days it rained, which is not unusual, of course, non-stop. and their seam seals back in the day weren't so good, so they were getting butter, knife and butter, and sealing it up with butter to stop the rain coming through the roof. So pretty desperate, eh?
Yeah, and how were they sort of getting then? Just grabbing the boat across the lake, or were they going around down the coast as well?
Yeah, through generally on the boat, and then they just walk massive ways in, and you have a big drop off of food. So yeah, they did a combination of things, but normally it was the boat.
And was he chasing reds on Stewart Island or going for whitetail?
Going for whitetail, yeah. He certainly loved that. I think that was in his kind of his later years when he sort of started to slow down a little bit. He didn't slow down a lot, but it was just enough for him. I think he found his happy place down there. So definitely a big goal of mine to go back to those hunting spots he went, and just to be there. Eh? I've got a few of his old hut photos. I went through his albums, and some of the huts, most of them are gone, but some of them that are existing, I'm pretty keen to go back to, and just kind of from that family connection. So there might be a couple on Stewie I had to go check out.
Mate, that's bloody special. So you mentioned pack rafting, and that's why we couldn't talk the other week. How did it all go?
Oh, yeah, it's been good. Pack rafting's a pretty new sport for me. I just kind of had a mate who bought one, and he said, "Oh, just get into it." So I did, and we've just been hitting the water ever since. So I've actually got another trip coming up, hopefully in a few days. I've got to take a bit of time off work because I've been working too much in Te Aroha, but hopefully we'll do a 5-dayer. We're just hoping for a bit of rain because the water level's a bit low at the moment, but it makes it a bit bony, a little bit hard to bounce down. But the whole point of that for me was just I like the idea of being able to float down a river with a rifle and shoot a deer and put it on the raft. That was the primitive idea, and it's a bit more complicated than that, I found. So hitting up some technical grade 3+ waters definitely been pretty exciting. It's enough for me. I'm a bit of an adventure seeker. Sometimes you get a bit sick of tramping and walking around, and so I thought, why not get a pack raft? So we'll see how we go on the next big trip.
And so what was your experience with rafting or kayaking before? Like if you want to do the coast to coast, you've got to do the grade 3 certification. What have you done?
Oh, crikey, I shouldn't say that. No, man, it's jumping in from pretty much nothing. I did a little bit of kayaking on some odd courses as a young fella, and really enjoyed it. And just with this one, I think that the trick is safety in numbers. Just script up with a few mates and who also have them, and we just play it that way. Do a bit of research, bit of homework, takes a fair bit of thought into getting the flow right and understanding how to read whitewater. And I'm definitely not an expert at it. Had a couple of times where those holes suck you back in and you got to paddle like heck to get out of them. But it's just learning through experience and being safe about it. It's not something you can just kind of go and do a grade 2 rapid straight away. You definitely got to build into it. So getting those experienced people is also really important. So I'm kind of networking at the moment, building that network of people who know more than I do, which is good. I'm a firm believer of having more people around you that know everything rather than you knowing everything. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing with pack rafting. Yeah.
Nice, mate. And you brought up Te Aroha. What's your role there? I saw you ducking into the huts at the Eastern Whio Link Hughes. How was that a crossover?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Again, so my role, I'm quite fortunate to be able to work in Te Aroha with TUT, so Tuhui, the trust. And again, it's asset conditions. So a lot of huts in there. There's, I think, again, around 44 visitor huts. Got biodiversity work huts as well, and obviously a big Mammoth track. So they all need to be checked and made sure that they're still, safe and in good condition. So that's why I'm running around in there. Just catching up on work and making sure the huts are good. A few swing bridges too, quite big old Forest Service swing bridges. So the Weka, the other day I did a 7-day solo trip, very heavy pack because I had to carry a few tools and hut books, so wasn't light. And did a big loop in the Tauranga side and from Waimana, and went over and looped into Eastern Whio Link country. So that was pretty cool. Saw a few whio, only saw 4. But it was pretty neat to see. So looped around to Tawaha and then back up into Te Aroha. So old Sam the Trap Man's country.
Yeah, Matt Short and I are hoping to join him in about June. So that should be bloody good fun. For me, looking at Te Aroha, it seems a little bit of a mystery. What's sort of you said ecology going on in there? What's sort of the management focus for that area?
Yeah, so in terms of, I guess you can split the 2A, ecology or biodiversity and assets. And for me now, I have a background in ecology and biodiversity at university, so that's kind of my strong point. But my game now is an asset. So in terms of the biodiversity space, I couldn't tell you a lot about what they're doing, but I know they do have some pretty good trapping programs that are running through. If you think of Te Rewera as a whole, I think you've got to kind of think that it's in its primitive state. It's just growing, it's fostering this kind of idea and these awesome goals they have. So it's not something that's already established necessarily from Doc's time. There's a lot of new ideas and new programs going in. So with that, especially the biodiversity space, they're definitely exploring new ideas, which is really cool. So maybe new trapping methods or different ways to do things, I guess. So from that aspect, the biospace is definitely growing. There's definitely lots of biodiversity in there. Like you just see the feel and a few kaka flying around, lots of robins, really cool to see. I haven't heard any kōkako yet, but they are in there in places. So yeah, definitely a little hub.
Yeah, and so has that country been milled at any stage in the past, or is it all just sort of virgin stuff?
Well, I guess that depends where you define the boundary of Te Rewera. I mean, a lot of the flats, there's some pretty cool river flats in there that, again, I'm not too sure of the history of it, but there likely would have been some milling on certain fringes, I guess. But right in the guts of it, no, she's pretty wild and untamed, very similar to the Talaros or the Uruhenis, for example.
Yeah.
Very dense podocarp kind of forest. Thing with Te Rewera, there's not a lot of open tops either, eh? It's quite closed in, so definitely some big mature trees in there that would have been really good. Some Europeans might have liked those for their tables or their timber, so you could see why it would be attractive here.
Now there's nothing like coming across those old trees. We came across it. Well, I guess it was a matai on the weekend, and it was just covered in moss. This giant thing, and it's it's amazing when you find a tree like that. You just want to go over and touch it and just be a part of it and crane your neck high skyward, and then you just start seeing all the species that are living off this old gigantic tree. And you just sit there in awe.
Yeah, and that's right. And so you do sit in awe, and it's really cool to slow down and see that. I think as hunters, it's quite cool to be able to, I think we take in quite a lot through observation. So just looking up and going, oh yeah, that's this kind of tree, and those epiphytes up in there. And one cool thing in Te Rewera I've found recently are the big northern rata, obviously their pseudo trunk, how they grow down and they'll go around the host tree, if you like, and that tree will eventually die and it's hollow. And I've seen some really cool examples of those. And it blows you away how these big hollow, you could fit in it, you can hop in these big hollow trunks. It's just awesome.
Yeah, there's one brewing, I can't remember. There's a brand new service hut in the Kaimais, and I walked to it while I was in there just before New Year's, and there's a rata brewing on a big old remu tree along that track, and I just looked up. It wasn't in flower, but you saw it just obviously just finished flowering, and I was just looking at wow, that thing's going to be awesome in 20, 50, 100 years.
Yeah.
Like what an awesome tree. How does it sort of start there to begin with? Does it just have a seed dropped up in the boughs of one of the branches, or what does it do?
Yeah, so a lot of people think obviously that trees grow up naturally. It's what we think, but northern rata as a vine, that's how they start their life. So they'll get into the crown of the tree as a seed, and they'll send roots down essentially. And over time, so they're using the nutrients in the crown of the tree, because in the crown of the tree, obviously we can't really get to it, so we often don't appreciate how nutrient rich it is in there, and it's a host of life. And so these rata do quite well, and they'll grow down, and over time they'll essentially engulf the tree and form its own trunk. The vines, if you like, or the root system will connect up and form a trunk. But there's some debate as to whether they actually kill the host tree, because this process takes a long time, hundreds of years. So by the time, there's some debate again, by the time that trunk, that pseudo trunk grows around, they reckon the host tree is probably at a point where it's old anyway and may die, naturally. So it may not actually kill the tree, but I wouldn't like a rata growing down me. I don't think that would be. I think you'd be packing yourself a few of that mata or that metal,
Yeah, and it just reminded me of a kahikatea I saw in the Kaimais as well. It's like, man, how big do those things get?
Yeah. So the kahikatea, being New Zealand's tallest tree, the Cody obviously is known for being quite wide, quite a big girth tree, but the old kahikatea, they get pretty big. But the northern rata, as well as starting as a vine or as in the top of it, they can start on the ground as a normal tree if you like, but they're quite short and stunted. But you've got a few on my folks' farm back home that started like that. They're quite nubbly, but they have no hollow trunk, so they can start as a normal tree if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, what a fascinating thing. So with your study, what sort of things did you venture into, and yeah, what was your focus?
Yeah, so again, growing up, coming from a farm, I had a few deer running around, so backed onto the foothills of Tararua. So I was pretty keen to get into ecology and conservation at a young age. So I went to uni and did 3 years undergrad in science, Bachelor of Science, doing ecology and earth science. So basically trees, plants, and rocks. You know, the whole good mix. I thought that geology would put a good spin on it for future employment. So I did that, and then realised I probably want to do more study. So I did another year in postgrad in ecology and conservation biology, you know, wildlife management. That was really neat. And then I was going to do masters, and I thought, nah, I've got to get out of here. I was getting told off by my lecturers for spending too much time in the bush on the weekdays. So I thought, okay, this is me. I'll take a pass here. So that's when I started working for Doc on and off. And from that hut story I told you earlier, and he ended up sort of progressing into the ecology field on Doc for a few temps on and off, and looking at I did a bit with the deer plan in Palmerston North. So when I worked in the Manawatu team, we looked at ruahenes and deer, which is a pretty controversial topic, but a pretty cool one to be involved with. So yeah, my study kind of led me down that conservation pathway, but in a complete change of events, I'm now working with assets. So they kind of interlink, but it's good to have both sides. I think it's really neat to be able to have a conversation with people from an asset point of view and the ecology point of view, because I'm sitting in a hut, you know, someone's in there as well, and they'll ask you, what's your thoughts on 1080, or, you know, are we really saving the birds? And so it's good for me to have that knowledge and pass it on. So quite fortunate to be in my position.
So you said there that the sort of interest in the deer running around the back of the farm led you into looking at ecology, but then what you studied was dirt, forest, and rocks. Like, so how did that sort of foundation set you up, and did you always keep thinking of, you know, we're going to talk about the animals and the introduced species?
Yeah, for sure. And that's a tricky one, because at university, I mean, in my experience anyway, and this isn't true for all universities, a lot of game animals, what we would call game animals, are treated, you know, probably as pests, or that's how they're taught as. So that kind of pathway, I went into it wanting to change that, or to learn more about that from I guess an ecologist perspective, because there are two different perspectives there. So it's important to realize that that whole, you know, game animal thing and pest, or resource and pest, is very different. So I wanted to understand that, and to do that I had to learn about the whole system. So, you know, and that's really the guts of it. You've got to, I think, before we start making assumptions on, especially for game animal management, you've got to understand the whole system. So that's why I wanted to know about the ecology and the earth. So, you know, what kind of rock types are there? Why is that tree going to grow there? So on, and then what's going to feed on that? You know, so that was really important. So getting that whole foundation, I guess, prep to tackle those bigger wildlife management decisions, yeah, was really important.
And I guess if you sort of look at it like a farming perspective, you don't see a whole bunch of broadleaf, you know, paddocks on deer farms. Yeah, like my vision for a deer farm is paddocks lined with broadleaf and caprosma and stuff, but it's not going to be in the paddock. So yeah, is that sort of where you start broadening your knowledge that, hey, the deer want the food and they're going to make it sort of look more like their environment, whereas, I don't know, the native bush, the virgin bush, is quite dense, like you say. Those areas in Rohenes and Taros and Te Arawera are quite dense and compact, and, you know, supplejack everywhere, those sorts of things. Is that sort of, I don't know, I'm just trying to think about this out loud. Is that what sort of the vision is in terms of the native ecology?
Well, I think what it really draws back to, and you got to wear two hats here again. You got to wear your ecology's hat and you got to wear your hunter hat, and I think they can be interchangeable. So ecology as a pure science, or, you know, and I'm trying to understand the system, it's very hard to see the impacts when you don't want to see them. And that's a lot of the case. What we do, like, we just go in the bush and, oh cool, there's a few trees here and we don't know what they are, but the deer aren't doing too much damage, and that's a mindset that's very easy to get into, because we're not, you're just walking through hunting, you're not really looking, and you're not studying it like an ecologist would. So there's two different trains of thought there. And like you said, kind of about lining, or having a different type of system with different plants. Like New Zealand would be a very different place if we didn't have these introduced animals. And browsers do have a massive impact on forest regeneration, especially. Sika are a real big one, especially consuming beech. We start to get massive failures in beech regeneration. So that can occur, and it's been proven to occur with too many animals. So that difference, I guess, in understory is really hard to see. I mean, they used to do the good old exposure plots back in the Forest Service days to see, which gives you an idea, but it's not really something you can do management of. Like there's a few broadleaves there, but that doesn't really tell us. It's quite hard to quantify. So, but just knowing that there is going to be a huge drop in palatable species, it's quite useful, but it's really hard to act on as a whole. Because I mean, how do you know how many deer you're going to go and remove? Do you just guess a figure? So I think that's where the point comes in. It's more about vegetation, or it should be conservation, in my opinion, in my limited understanding. Definitely not a expert on this matter, but it should be based on vegetation condition rather than how many animals there are. Because you could have 200 deer, or you could have 400 deer, but 200 deer might still be too many. It really, even the minimum number could be too much. So rather than just basing on, okay, cool, we saw, so many tar, it's rather on how many species are there, what are the condition, what's the growth, so you're measuring different kinds of things, growth rates, not just a presence abundance of species or presence absence, but actually condition of growth. So there's a whole range of things there. It's a lot more complicated than, like, I used to just walk through and I cool, there's some broadleaves, but it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny you sort of say, like, the average hunter might say, oh, I don't really know, I saw those species or whatever you say, but then it's almost, if people do act in that way, it's almost cognitive dissonance, because when you're looking for spots with deer in it, you're looking for certain things. And like, we were walking along the track on Saturday, and it was kind of like the hot bead areas. It's like, well, we're looking at our binoculars, this is the kind of terrain and tree species that we're looking for in the binoculars. And you sort of go around and you see the bush change and different things, and you get your hackles up when the bush changes to what you think is a place that deer are living. So it is kind of there, and that's where, like, having your ecology understanding or hearing a little bit more about ecology can help you as a hunter, help you as a bushman, and help wrap this all up into one big conservation effort. Yeah,
you're right, bang on. And I agree. One thing my very expensive degree taught me was I know how to identify the trees deer like to eat. So it's really good. I can, cool, we'll go over there. But the other cool thing is foraging, and that's definitely a real neat skill. That's what you said about kind of tree types, is identifying what's safe to eat. And I'm certainly getting into a bit of that, and that's quite a cool subject. But I must say, some of the guys who do it are just hardcore. Like, it's pretty hard to survive off some taupo berries. Like, I'll give you that. You've got to be doing well to survive off what's out there.
Yeah, I saw some berries on a little bush there on the weekend. I was like, I wonder if those are one of the edible ones.
Yeah. So it's just getting that whole, like I say, the whole ecology does help us as hunters a lot. And I think if you have that mindset where you understand both sides of the story, you'll always be better off. I don't think there's a need to be, a hunter or an ecologist. You can be both. You just got to wear that different hat at different times. And that's really helpful for going in there and looking in the beech forest and going, wow, there are no red gen beech coming through. There must be a lot of Sika in here. And sure enough, you see lots of Sika, and you go, okay, cool. How do we as hunters help that? So it's just taking that next step. And it's hard to quantify that in terms of the pure science, because again, we just go, there's a few beech trees missing, So that's the hard part is I guess branching out, just that next step.
And are you going to see, like, is it terraforma, like seedlings, juveniles, and then the big old buggers? Are you going to see that? Like, I was seeing a bit of like juvenile remu and totoro, but you see the seedling, and I don't know if there's juvenile. I don't know. I must have a better look.
Yeah, so I guess so they do go through different stages of age, if you like, but it depends on the form of succession as well. So like in beech, for example, you have a big tree fall down and those seeds that are lying in the ground just waiting, they'll all just pop up, and that's why you see huge stands of all beech that are the same age. So that's where you get that difference in canopy formation. So we and Rimu are very different. So yeah, they do have ages and stages. And if you look at look on a next time you're sitting on a slip with the binos, just have a look at the foliage around. Often you get like wineberry, mako, things like that coming out. A lot of those smaller shrubs will start to come out, and they'll have their time. They're they get a lot of nitrogen fixes, and then they'll be slowly replaced by those bigger trees. So it's just a stage thing. It's quite cool to see when you start looking at, especially slips. You can see it happening. And I know a few guys who would have probably gone over and pulled a few of those bigger trees out on slips, just to keep the grass growing. So you can kind of use that to different advantages, I guess, if you like. I'm not saying that because that's terrible, but it's really cool when you start to see those bigger trees come in.
Yeah, and going back to your sort of soils and stuff like that, I can't think of his last name. I don't know why it's escaped me right now, but David, who's a professor at Canterbury with forestry and ecology, one of the things he's written about is those, when they do a certain plot, if the seed bed's not there or the soil's wrong, then you don't get the seeds taking off. What sort of impact does that change in soil have on our seed bed? Is that what he sort of talks about, the progression of the bush, that you get that kanuka, maybe even gorse first, then that creates a nursery for the bigger trees to grow up through and take off. But if the seed bed's not there, then we've got a hole.
That's right. And so at uni I didn't focus on soils because soils scared the heck out of me. So I went for rocks.
Sounds like me and genetics, mate.
I avoided genetics too, I tell you that much for free. But yeah, so I was more into the rock stuff, but you're right. Soils and rocks, the foundation there is really important. I mean, if you look at some of the ultramafics down south, like your Red Hills, that kind of thing, around the Richmond Ranges, there's nothing that grows there, to the extent that we're up here, and that's just because of that, I guess, that richness of the soil and the rock type. So looking back, at the basement is really important, just to understand what can grow there. And but yeah, soil's probably more so, rocks maybe not so much, because soil is not just rock, it's a whole lot of organic, a whole lot of goodness going on in there. Can't remember the formulas, I didn't listen that well in uni in soils, but yeah, you're right, there's a whole lot going on that can really impact what kind of forest and what kind of trees grow up.
And that's one thing I'm sort of fascinated at the moment with, this sort of surge in the idea of regenerative agriculture, having enough sort of organic matter injected. Does that mean that our game animals can play a role? And like I say, there's the trade-off that they're browsing at the same time, but is their contribution to the organic matter of the forest and the soil, is that a positive? Yeah, it's another question that we don't know the answer to.
Yeah. So what do you mean? So do you mean through their manure or their
through their manure
and around on hooves, or?
Yeah, it's transfer of soil around, manure, urine. That turnover of vegetation.
I mean, yeah, that's right. I mean, a lot of, I guess that's good to look at that as a disturbance. So in terms of forest ecology, you often look at things as disturbance events, and that can promote, large scale floods and things and fires. Obviously, large scale disturbance will initiate that kind of succession. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Maybe those smaller, browsers walking around, maybe enough of them, they might have a positive impact. I know there's a good or bad argument that moa and deer are similar depending on which study you read, but that may or may not be good. A few people reckon that the moa that deer are just moa running around now, but that can be debated. There's a couple of good articles on either side of that. It's I read both one day for a study at uni, and I was torn. As a hunter, I was like, man, this is tough.
Tough choice. You definitely wonder how the odd thistle and foxglove and of course the hookgrass got in there, and you kind of go, when you see it all attached to your hair on your legs or your pants, you definitely think, well, that was probably deer fur.
Yeah, that's right, and that's the thing. Like if you think next time you go in the hills, like as an audience, think like when you go to a hut, just look around and see what plants are there, and there'll all be weeds like foxgloves and like say thistles, and they're only generally you get them in heavily disturbed areas. So if you get and you notice it really easy in mountain bike tracks or horse tracks especially, you'll get gorse and all sorts of stuff, blackberry all through there. And I think it shows you that the level of impact we have where the far remote places, they'll still have the odd weed around the hut, and that's just because weeds are persistent little buggers, man. Like, they'll go on anything, they can just live it out, and they'll pop up where that sun is, but they won't penetrate far in because their life cycle is real short. But you get gorse in there, you're in trouble, So.
Yeah, it was interesting. The guy that's the pest manager for that Mohaki area, I found clematis in there last time that was in seed, and I sort of sent him the photo. I was like, is this clematis or is this old man's bed? And he sort of gave me the time frame that the old man's bed would have been more like January, and this was December, and it was smaller. Both him and Dave were asking me about how many leaves they had beneath the flowers. I was like, I didn't take that much notice. But
should have got some measurements, mate.
Yeah, that's right.
Calipers out. Yeah.
Taking the whole number of photos for them. But that was one of the sort of things he asked me about some of the clay pans. He said, "Did you see much gorse out there?" And I said, one or two ones. And he said, that's not so bad. They won't dominate that. The manuka or kanuka that's up in there will take over and create that nursery, and we should get the trees back up in there. So yeah, it's fascinating you say. But like I say, on slips, around the edges, you'll grab one of the bushes and go, oh shit, that's gorse.
yeah, or a bit of cunny grass or something horrible. It cuts you to bits. Yeah, that's right.
And what's the vibe with pampas grass? That's not supposed to be there, is that right? Yeah.
No, yeah. So yeah, that's another one that can be quite often misidentified, if you like. It's horrible stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so
not the awesome weed.
It's not a toy, yeah. That's right.
No, it's not a toy, and there's I still get confused which one, but there's the difference in the seed head and in the leaves as well. You have to go and listen to some. I think how many podcasts might have been on Hamiura's one talked about it, or seen one of his videos, because you always forget. Hey, like, I think if you don't see a certain plant for a length of time, you just forget about it, and you go, like in uni we had to learn like 200 Latin names for all these plants, all the native plants, and man, I just had them all good for about a month, and then I just forgot them all. And you see this tree in the bush, and you're like, I can't remember what that is. If you don't use it, you lose it, eh?
So how did you go about learning that? Because for me, that was pharmacology, and probably I should have done the same tactic when I was doing genetics. I probably should have wallpapered my room and the little, I think they're like phages, and it was just complicated in a foreign language. So is pharmacology, names, how they work, interactions. It's just this foreign language. So I wallpapered my room. What did you do to get around learning? Which is weird because you say Latin names, learning muscles and stuff. I could, put them in their place. But when it comes to drugs and drug interactions, I was like, I can't do this. What did you do, man?
Yeah, I can relate. So you say you put maps around of you wallpapered your room of notes. I wallpapered my room with maps of the tararuas. So I didn't really take that technique on. I probably should have. But for me, it was just more rote learning. Just flashcards. You just got to, and it's really hard. I tried to take, because I was doing so much hunting and tramping, I just had to make that sacrifice. I started taking notes with me into the bush, and that didn't work well either, because I was trying to hunt and I had to go back and read my notes, and I was a nightmare. So don't ever. I mean, if you can do it, sure, but no, just repetition. Just get a group of buddies and just repeat the heck out of stuff, especially for learning. Like you say, I think it's okay if you've got to rote learn stuff, but complex systems doesn't work so much. But for Latin names, you just gotta look at pictures and just spend days of your life in a room looking at it, and it does pay off. It's pretty cool to get out in the bush to be able to remember. I mean, it's a useless party trick. We're out in the bush and you just tell your mates, that's whatever this tree is, and they go, oh, shut up. We don't want to know what kind of tree it is. And you still, my 40 grand student loan's got to be good for something, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, I was having a laugh with Jason Verbees yesterday. He was showing his little bush block that he's going to start trapping, and he's saying about whiteywood. And I said to him, is that mahoi? And he said, yeah, that's mahoi. And then I said, yeah, I had this situation on the weekend where we walked in, and Remu tree, that was obvious, and I sort of showed it to the guy who's Australian as well, so I was having to try and get common names and Māori names as well. And then we walked past Lancewood, and I was like, oh god, what is that bloody thing called? And I had leatherwood in my head. I was like, that's not what it's called. And walked in, and then we're walking back out again, so we're nearly back at the car, and we walked past it again. I was like, Lancewood, this one's a Lancewood. bloody hopeless. And David's last name is David Norton. He's an absolute champ, and he's the same. I just flick him a picture of something, and he'll tell me the Latin name and Māori name and common name, and I was like, oh, you're amazing. But I suppose when you're a professor in those sorts of things, you know them a bit.
That's right.
Yeah. How much of the trees like show up as it must just be a massive syllabus of here you go, here's their names. what does that sort of, what's the meaning of that go into a larger context of the course?
Well, I guess for one, if you're a forest ecologist, which is kind of where I was heading, plant ecology was my kind of thing, as well as conservation biology and wildlife management, and to really understand how succession forests occur and what kind of forest types we have, you've got to know the trees. It's like you got to know your tools to do a job. It's the same thing. You just got to know what's there. So while it might not help you in any sort of mathematical or scientific sense, you just got to know what's there. It's just that basic understanding, and it's basic, but it's actually damn hard. Like, it's probably some of the hardest parts is learning all the names. To be honest, you got to do it.
Yeah, you're saying about the life cycle of the forest. How much knowledge do we have on the progression? How long has this been sort of looked at? The 100 years, the 150 years, is that even enough for the lifetime of a forest yet?
Oh, crikey. I mean, heck, remember, I'm dealing with assets now. I've gone away from
you got away.
To avoid these kind of questions. But I mean, the thing is with forests, they're so complicated. And I mean, I remember this argument we had at uni. We were given this question there was this big old rimu tree, and it was dead. And it was this massive trunk. And we looked at it and they said, well, how did it die? And we said, it died of old age. And the question was, well, how does a tree die of old age? And we just were kind of stuck for that. Like, do trees die of old age? Well, probably not. Like, why would a tree have any reason to die? If it's got the resources and the nutrients and the water, why would it die? So there was this huge debate that we had, it was, can trees die of old age? Well, I don't know. And that's a question that's been hotly debated. So can a forest, if a forest isn't disturbed, will the trees just get infinitely big until they run out of resources? I mean, that doesn't mean they're going to die of old age. It means they're competing with each other. So it's real tricky. I think when you get, you sit around for too long, you have too much time on your hands, you come up with problems to your solutions, So one of those situations.
Yeah, all I can sort of think of that is straight away think of human body and us dying of old age. Like, there's all these sort of things that manifest, and like I always being an optometrist, think straight to the eye in cataracts. Like, we've got this lens in our eye that's impeccably designed, and how it works is amazing. Yet, in order to be clear, it can't have a blood supply, and so it relies on a flow of fluid through channels through all these little cells that are like set out in a uniform distance. So that's why it's clear. If you've ever done physics, it's got positive interference instead of negative interference. It flows right through. But then over time, those little channels break down, so the flow of fluid through it reduces, so it becomes less bouncy, and then it oxidizes, so the DNA and the protein and stuff damage out, and then you end up with a cataract. And so that's just one small example of a lifetime and old age. And I think that's like one of the few things when people are like, it's just part of getting older. And we're like, well, yeah, there's a spectrum of age of this thing, but basically everyone gets cataracts. And so, when you talk about tree and resources and its internal cellular systems, I think, well, surely they can't recycle everything within in a tree. There must be finite resources within it. But it's like I say, when you sit around long enough and you come up with problems that you struggle to find the answers to.
And that was a really good description. I feel like I'm back at uni there. That was awesome. That was choice. Oh.
I have to drop that piece of knowledge about 3 or 4 times a day. So after 7 or 8 years, I'm getting better at communicating that one, and it's even better when we've got our little computer program to sort of show the example. Yeah, it's good just for those visual learners out there. Unfortunately,
nice.
I could send you an email if you want it.
Oh no, a picture's much better. I'm a visual learner, mate. Send me a
visual
picture.
learner. Yeah. I suppose that must be what was behind you. Oh yeah, I'll take my notes into the bush. Like, they just stayed in your pack. You added pack weight for no reason.
Well, I remember doing I did a bit of search and rescue stuff as well. Not enough as I should, just get too busy with work. But we did a search in Taupo a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago. Flew into Tarn Ridge Hut, or Tarn Fridge as it's known. It's freezing cold, and there was snow in there. And I had quite a big uni project on. This was in my postgrad year, And you know, postgrad's a huge step up from undergrad, and I had all these projects on the go, and get to my lecturer, like they've got a search on the go, like I need to go do this, you know. And he said, yep, sweet, just know your deadline's the same, and you know, don't fail. And I was like, oh shit, thanks, mate. So I flew all these scientific articles. I had like a stack of them, flew them in with me, did our search for the day, and got back to the hut, and everyone was having a brew and, you know, sitting around by the fire, and I was frantically writing out these notes, saying all the old guys just gave me so much stick. What are you doing? And I said, well, you know, this is a compromise, you know, that's what it's about, finding that level of compromise. And it worked.
So what was the project you did for postgrad? That was postgrad diploma, was it? Or?
Yeah, did a postgrad diploma with the intent to do masters. So for that one, it was just a kind of research project, or I guess like a literature review, if you like, on that one. So it wasn't too interesting, but I was building up towards a master's thesis, hopefully in the subantarctic with megaherbs. So looking at kind of growth traits. So with some of those big, for people don't know, megaherbs are kind of plant species that are really unique to the subantarctic. The Chatham Islands kind of has a few of their own as well, but they're really big, kind of huge leaved and massive flowers, which is quite unique because they're in a very cold climate. So I was kind of gearing up to go and look at some of those, but COVID got in the way, and it was quite expensive and hard to get down there. So I thought, well, I'll take a break from this for now. But yeah, megaherbs are pretty cool. They're quite a fascinating little plant. There's a few species, and they have yellow flowers and kind of pink purple flowers, which is very uncommon in the New Zealand bush. You know, we don't see that really. You certainly get yellows and your whites, because whites are pollinated often by flies, certainly alpine flora. But down there, there's a massive array of colours. So it's quite cool. I've been fortunate to travel down there twice to the subantarctic, and hopefully get back down there in the future.
So that's quite interesting when the alpine herbs are quite small and tiny and sort of bonsai size. What sort of leads to these large foliage? Is that just trying to get enough light, but then it's kind of like a wasted, like the bigger you are, the more you need.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a huge, and again, the literature is just chocker with, you know, kind of different examples to understand why. And that's one of them. You know, being big is good, but it takes a lot of resources to keep yourself going. But often the leaves, and they might be able to catch aerosols, so salt particles and things in from the ocean as well, a lot of nutrients. But certainly, sunlight's really hard to get in the subantarctic. It's cold, but it's often mostly overcast. So when it's sunny, you've got to really ramp up, you know, your energy production as a plant to maximize that photosynthesis period. So maybe that's a reason for their big size. Other kind of arguments are that it's a leftover from a Antarctic flora way back in the day when the ice ages and all that stuff were going on. You know, they're kind of remnants that have kind of passed through time, if you like. And there's the big question with climate change and a warming climate, what's going to happen to these plants? You know, are they going to get cooked? You know, are they going to not be able to survive in their habitat? Because basically the subantarctic islands are like, think of like the Tararua tops. It's like that at sea level. So it's you know, it's a pretty cool, epic place. The trees don't grow. You kind of get some dracophyllums and a few on Auckland Island. You get a few kind of ratas, but you don't get them big. They're only shrubs. You know, you can kind of, it's like leatherwood, pushing through leatherwood. You know, so it's a really unique flora and really cool place.
I just had another thought. Is there like a larger cell size amongst these herbs? Does that sort of larger size leave them less prone to fracturing from freezing, but then at the same time, like excessive heat would rupture them in a different way?
Yeah, I don't think freezing so much an issue. Like it's not like when we talk subantarctic, we're not quite halfway between New Zealand and Antarctica. So you know, you might get the odd bit, but it's not like it's, you know, I don't think it's necessarily, or at least what I can remember, it was necessarily due to the cold. It's probably more so for energy, you know, resource and partitioning and so on. So
you know, it's probably sort of the size of the island is probably good luck. Like you said, all the salt and things probably keeps the freezing temperature a bit higher. You know, that's what people think about Invercargill, that it snows there all the time, but because it's so coastal, it actually doesn't. You drive 20 minutes north to Winton, it's a different story, but Invercargill itself doesn't actually get that much snow.
Yeah, it's just a cold hole anywhere though, eh? Don't need snow to be cold.
Yeah, no, it's very good. Mate, so where do people check in on this adventure? And I mentioned there at the start, your Instagram, that's sort of how they keep track of you, is it?
Yeah, I found Instagram's good. It's just getting full of ads nowadays, but definitely for me, I put photos on there, but finding it slowed down a bit with the old ads. But I just, all my trips, hunting trips, tramping trips, hut bagging. My goal is to get to every hut in New Zealand. So might take me a few years, so Instagram might have changed by then. But yeah, Weka's Adventures on Instagram, and that's kind of my go-to. And yeah, jump along for the ride. It's good.
Nice, man. So we've had a little bit of an exploration into your life and some of the things that have shaped your ideas. What is something for you personally that shows up? As you said, you've listened to the podcast, so you've heard this question, like that keeps you moving ahead, keeps you flowing. I was laughing yesterday when we were walking out. I said to the bloke, "What song have you got in your head?" I was bopping away, and it turned out to be the last song. It hadn't even played the full amount that we were listening to in the car, but yeah, 2 days later it was going on in my head. You know, what keeps you flowing along? And as I've said in previous podcasts, can be a quote or a way of life. The thing that drives you forward. What's that for you?
Yeah, I thought about this because yeah, there's quite a few. I think life's full of funny kind of quotes that stick with you. But one that really sticks for me is that you know, life's full of peaks and valleys, and you can let the peaks and valleys get too high sometimes, or too low from the valleys case. And it's important to find that balance between them, eh? So don't let your peaks get too high and don't let your valleys get too low, and find your mechanism that achieves that. And for me, that's people, you know, friends and whānau. It's really important. So yeah, find the balance.
Mate, that's bloody awesome. I think our old Ian Evans that did that running in the Revenant had a similar idea. That was just like, you know, the peak. This is going to be really shit. This is going to be really great, and I've just got to, like you say, find that way to move myself forward to the good stuff again. Yeah, no, bloody awesome.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Ben. We'll hit pause, and yeah, thanks again.
No worries, mate.